All right, hello everyone. My name is Mike. Today we're going to talk about a piece of software called VirtualBox. Before we get started, keep in mind that in the description of this video, I've left time codes so you can skip to a certain part of this video if you're only interested in watching one part of the video and not the entire video. So let's get started. What is VirtualBox? Okay, what is VirtualBox? I'm going to go to VirtualBox's homepage here, which is basically just virtualbox.org. And I suggest you go here and get ready to download VirtualBox. But basically, VirtualBox is something called a hypervisor. What does a hypervisor do? A hypervisor is like a little program that you can run on your computer that will allow you to have entire operating systems running inside of a little window. Let me show you what I mean just for a second. Let me just try to illustrate this just very quickly. Imagine we have this program up. I'm just going to launch a program called Notepad. Everybody probably knows this one. It's just a little text editor. It's got a window, it's got some buttons and stuff. We can type some stuff in here. But in the Notepad program, what's happening is under the hood, there's some code running, there's some data present, and the program talks to your operating system and draws itself on your display. But it's just like, a window that holds something, right? Holds some data, in this case, just text. Imagine if instead of text, we had a full operating system. What if you looked inside of Notepad and you could see a desktop, a Windows desktop, like with a little start button and a taskbar and some background wallpaper, and everything that you usually see in Windows was also just inside of this little window. And what if you could go into that virtual Windows inside of the Notepad and configure Windows? Like you could change the settings, you could change files, upload files, you could install programs, and anything that you did inside of the little virtual Windows didn't actually affect your host machine. That would be pretty useful, right? Well, that's basically what Windows, what VirtualBox does. VirtualBox is a Type 2 hypervisor, which basically means that you can run all of your virtual machines in Windows and things, or headless or whatever, but VirtualBox itself only just needs to be installed as a program. A Type 1 hypervisor means you have to wipe out your whole computer in order to install the hypervisor in the first place. So VirtualBox is really good for people who are learning, hobbyists, or people with just, certain goals in mind. That kind of brings me, I guess, to my next point. Why would you even use a hypervisor? Why would you want to? The first thing that comes to mind is isolation and safety. What if you had some changes you needed to make to your operating system, or like a server you wanted to set up, a program you wanted to install? Maybe somebody sent you a link and maybe your boss wanted you to install something, whatever it is, or just an experiment that you wanted to run on your computer, but you were kind of maybe afraid that you were going to destroy your computer in the process. You don't want to lose your data. You don't want to have to reinstall, your whole operating system. Well, a virtual machine inside a VirtualBox or another hypervisor is a really good way to do that. You can install an entirely brand new operating system into a window and then just destroy it. Do anything you want with it, or just try to learn, mess around with no fear, with a lot of freedom to experiment. And then if you do push it too far and things go wrong, or if you just want to start over from the beginning, VirtualBox has a feature where you can roll back the guest operating system to a previous state, or you can just delete the whole thing and then start over with a new virtual machine. In fact, you could make several virtual machines. We could have 5 different windows up here, and each of them could have a different operating system. We could have a virtual Windows 11, a virtual Windows 10, a virtual Windows 10 again, a virtual Linux, a virtual FreeBSD, whatever you want. It's pretty cool. It's pretty useful. And unless you're really, really, really trying hard and you know what you're doing, it's virtually impossible for something happening inside of the guest operating system to hurt your outer computer. I should probably clarify the terminology that I'm using. The real operating system, the one that you're looking at right now on the screen, this is just going to be called the host operating system, because it's the one that's running VirtualBox. It's hosting VirtualBox. It's hosting all of the other virtual machines. And then any virtual operating system that's going to be running inside of this operating system, we'll call that the guest operating system, or the guest, or the inner operating system, and then the host could also maybe be called the outer operating system. But yeah, so Isolation, experimentation. You know, when I was first learning computer science, I was afraid to experiment. The way I solved that back in the day was I just bought a really dusty, dirty computer and just screwed around with it. But VirtualBox would have been much more valuable to me at that time. Now, when I want to experiment, I definitely use either VirtualBox or KVM or Proxmox or, you know, some hypervisor out there. So why would you want to use VirtualBox? Learning, isolation, and another reason that you would want to use VirtualBox is sometimes you'll realize that you kind of can't do everything you want to do, at least not in the exact same way that you want to do. The exact same way that you want to do it in your current operating system, and so you just kind of want to make a new operating system so you can do all that stuff. For example, my other videos are going to teach various topics, and I'm going to be using Linux in order to teach those topics. So if you're a Windows user and you're not really ready to erase your operating system and go full Linux yet, or maybe you never want to do that, then loading up Linux in a VirtualBox guest or as a VirtualBox guest would be a really good way to go. It would be a really good way to accomplish, you know, being able to use the same operating system that you're learning from, being able to use the same tools that you're seeing in the same ways that you're seeing without really fully committing to losing your outer operating system. Another cool reason that people use hypervisors is, I forgot the technical term for this. I used to know it, but imagine you have a server that you're setting up at your office, and maybe you're going to, on this server computer, you're going to put like a database server, you're going to put a web server, you're going to put like some sort of a server that deals with a bunch of your business logic. Maybe like you're going to process images. You're going to do a lot of stuff, a lot of complicated stuff on one machine. But then eventually you realize that you have enough traffic or enough activity on the machine that the machine starts to slow down, and you realize you need to split some of the services up to different machines. Well, if you installed all of the services onto the same machine in the first place, then that's going to be really hard. You know, you're going to have to like go through a bunch of configuration files and carefully copy everything from the first machine to the second machine, install all the dependencies to the second machine, you know, remove everything carefully from the first machine. It's not impossible. You know, we've all done it, but it's kind of a drag, right? Wouldn't it be a lot easier if you took a service that you knew was eventually going to have to move to its own machine, and just to start off with, you put it into a virtual machine? Like, imagine instead of installing my database server to my host machine, I just installed VirtualBox instead, or a different hypervisor, and then installed the database server inside of the guest operating system. Well, then later when I'm ready to move on, when I'm ready to upgrade to multiple computers, I can just copy and paste the virtual machine to the other computer and not really move configuration. I don't have to change DNS entries. I don't have to set up my networking again. I don't have to do anything. Just basically copy paste the virtual machine. And some hypervisors make it really easy to transport virtual machines back and forth between physical machines. So there's a lot of cool reasons to use a hypervisor in VirtualBox. I think I should probably stop there for now. But suffice it to say, everybody should try to learn it. It's really fun and really cool. Okay, so back to the download. Let's see. I'm having a hard time remembering which takes featured me downloading and installing and so forth, so bear with me if I repeat myself. Basically, you go to virtualbox.org, and we're going to click on the downloads link here. And you have to find the installer package for your operating system, your host operating system. That's not the same thing as what the guest operating system is going to be. So we're not talking about what operating system we're going to virtualize. We're talking about the computer that you're running right now. What operating system is that computer? The one you're looking at for this video is Windows. So I'm going to click on Windows Hosts and download that executable. If you're already running Linux, I have to wonder why you're watching this video, but if you're already running Linux, you could download it here to get the latest version, but honestly, there's an apt command, there's a DNF command, or the VirtualBox is available in the official repos of whatever distribution you're running, probably. Solaris people, Mac people can use VirtualBox. It's been a little difficult at times, but you can do it. So anyway, I clicked on the Windows Hosts button, and I got a download here. And so you can see that my browser downloaded VirtualBox, the VirtualBox executable. So the next step is to actually try to run it. we're going to come up against a roadblock here. If I try to run it, it says, do you want this app to make changes to your device? Yes, I do. It says preparing to install, and it says, oh no, I can't install. Oracle VirtualBox needs Microsoft Visual C++ 2019 redistributable package, blah, 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 blah. I mean, you should honestly get in the habit, if you're going to be learning a lot of computer science online, get in the habit of really reading these error messages, punching them into search engines. Don't just kind of click stuff and say, well, I don't know what happened, I give up, I'm going to go play video games. So I think the solution to this one is, in Windows, you just need to install an extra executable from Microsoft so that VirtualBox has all of the libraries that it needs, or all of the extra code that it needs. So I'm going to hit OK here, and then it'll say, oh no, it didn't work, click Finish, and it's basically an error, so then everyone is sad for a little while. In another window I have, let's see, maybe I should demonstrate this for you. In another window I have the error message that I was seeing punched up into a search engine. So I'm going to do this, whoops, oh, I don't have clipboard stuff enabled, alright. I'll do that later. VirtualBox needs Microsoft Visual C++. VirtualBox needs, yeah, there we go. VirtualBox needs Visual C++ 2019. Typically, if I was trying to solve a problem like this, I would just click on every single link one by one, open them all in new tabs, read as much as I needed to until I figured out what the problem was. But I think this first link is going to be pretty good. So you don't have to go to the same link that I went to. Just do a little research until you find an article that kind of explains what the problem is. In this case, the solution is basically to download the libraries directly from Microsoft. There's a download button here. Please don't click strange download buttons without verifying where the link goes. You can see, if you look at the bottom right of this screen, that it says learn.microsoft.com. So that is the correct domain name, microsoft.com. So I'm going to click on it. And hopefully Microsoft doesn't make it too hard. This is the first time I'm coming here, honestly. Okay, not too big of a page. So I think this first area is just exactly what we need. Okay, so let me hold the mouse over here, and that is an executable, and we're still on Microsoft's website. Okay. So when you see several downloads like this, it's going to ask you, or it's basically going to give you a choice to download the same program but for different CPU architectures. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're probably going to have to find out what CPU architecture your current computer is. If you don't have a Mac or like a fancy mobile computer or like a Chromebook or something, it's probably a safe bet that your architecture is x64 or x86_64. Here it's just x64. If your computer is very, very, very old, and it was made before they could exceed 4 gigabytes of memory, then you might actually have an x86 computer, which is okay too. If you have like some of the newer, well, I don't want to say too much about the Macs. I don't have one. But some Macs or Chromebooks or like mobile devices, tablets, things like that, they might have an ARM 64 CPU. You really just need to find the model number of the computer you're using and put it into a search engine and find out what your architecture is, because you have to download the correct architecture. So I know that my machine is x86_64, aka AMD 64. So I'm just going to click on this one. Hopefully this works, or this is going to be an embarrassing video. So it says VC redistributable x64. All right, so I guess I'm going to cross my fingers and click on this. And I guess I have to agree to the terms. I'm going to pretend to read them right now. You should read them at home. Be smarter than I am. I'm going to install them by clicking yes. Success, maybe. All right, so then that might be it. I might have to restart the computer. We'll see if I have to restart the computer, but I'm going to go ahead and try to execute the VirtualBox installer again and see what happens. Yes, preparing to install. Okay, next. Oh, it actually is going to work, yay. All right, so with these installer GUIs, they're pretty simple. You pretty much just, if you want to, I mean, This is kind of what I do. I just kind of click next a bunch of times until it's finished. But it's a little bit smarter to sort of look at what's happening, you know. Sometimes programs that you install, especially ones you find out in the wild, will have an option. And if you look at the option very carefully, you'll realize that they have pre-selected a spyware package for you to install. And you probably want to uncheck it. That's not the case in VirtualBox, but just, you know, be careful. All right, so VirtualBox USB support, networking, bridge networking, host-only network, and then Python? Oh, okay. So I'm going to click Next. Proceed, yes. Missing dependencies. Oh, when continuing, they need to be installed. I don't think we're going to do Python binding, so I'm just going to skip that. Click Install to begin the installation. Yeah. Later on, if you want to use special Python bindings with VirtualBox, which I've never even done, maybe I should go find out. I mean, I love Python, but I've never done Python bindings. I think that's just to like probably script VirtualBox. I don't even know. If you want to do that, you can just do a search for it or leave a comment in the video that you would really like me to do a tutorial on that. I'll figure it out and make a tutorial video if there's enough interest. Okay, so it looks like it finished without issue. There's a checkbox here that says Start Oracle VirtualBox after installation. If you couldn't make it this far, if it kept showing you errors, you probably have to ask yourself a bunch of questions. You probably have to take whatever error message you saw on the screen, punch it into a search engine, and see what other people have to say about how to solve the issue. If there are enough requests in the comments for a particular issue, I'll see if I can figure out a solution and post a video. But I think probably the most common issue that I've seen with people is just their computer's really old, and they're still on Windows 7, or they need to run some updates or something like that, or they've just done too much to their computer in terms of experimentation, and that's why they're on VirtualBox now. They realize the error of their ways, and maybe they need to reinstall their operating system first before they can use VirtualBox. I'm not really sure, but leave me your feedback in the comments. Anyway, so I'm going to click on Finish, and I'm going to minimize the browser. Oh, look at this! It already started. Let me X this out just so that we can start from scratch together. So, assuming that I've like installed everything successfully and I've like closed all my windows and everything, you hopefully will have a shortcut on the left side that says Oracle VM VirtualBox. I'm going to double click it, and here is the VirtualBox program. So before I go any further, by the way, there might be something extra that you have to do to get to this step. Although in the year 2023, I think probably the vast majority of computers already have this feature enabled. But the thing is, in order for a virtual machine to work in your computer, your CPU, the little tiny microchip that functions as the brain of your computer, it needs to have something enabled that we'll just generally call virtualization extensions, which just basically means VirtualBox can talk to your CPU in a special way so that the virtual machine can run extra fast. And if we don't have those enabled, it's unacceptably slow to the point where I don't even think VirtualBox will allow you to run it. So if you try to launch VirtualBox and it says that there's no VTX or there's no virtualization extensions or something like that, then you're probably actually going to have to go into the BIOS of your machine and switch on the virtualization features of your CPU, and then turn off the computer and then boot back into your operating system. I'm not going to put BIOS changes into this video, but again, leave a comment with your particular machine and like the BIOS that you're having trouble with. If I get enough comments for a particular system or a particular issue, I might turn it into another video where you can enable your BIOS. But you can punch the name of your computer into a search engine, and you can say how to enter the BIOS, how to enable virtualization extensions on the CPU, and there are a lot of tutorials out there that you can find. So you don't really need me to make a video to continue, although I will if you ask. Anyway, so let's just assume at this point we have VirtualBox up and it's ready. What do we do next? So, well, here's like the window. It's kind of like the Notepad window, right? But there's different stuff inside of here. The first thing that we need to do is we need to create a new virtual machine. What you're going to end up seeing here is on the left side of this panel, it's going to be a list of virtual machines that you've created. Like I said before, you can create many virtual machines. You're not limited to one. You could have 2 virtual machines, 3, 4, that are all Windows 10 or Linux or whatever you want. And maybe you're doing different things in each of the virtual machines. Like in the past, I've set up a virtual machine just for a friend. And then when I was finished, I just sent him the file, and then he just ran the virtual machine on his computer because he was, trying to learn something about Linux. I forgot what it was already, but so we need a file that can sort of serve as the installer file, right? Because when you install an operating system, usually you kind of expect to take like a USB thumb drive and stick it in the computer, or like in the olden days, like a CD or a DVD or like a floppy disk or something like that, right? So we need something to stick into the computer that's going to serve as the installer for the entire operating system. Most of the time when you buy your computer, your operating system's already on the computer, so you don't need to worry about that. But, well, hey, we got to worry now. So what are we going to do today? Well, the whole point of this is I want to show you how to install Linux inside of your Windows operating system. So I'm going to search for an operating system called Ubuntu. Ubuntu Linux. It's a really, really popular Linux. Some people will probably get mad at me for featuring it because it's very corporate and everything now. But I think it's really great still. And there are a bunch of different Linuxes on the internet. In fact, before I download Ubuntu, I'm going to take you to a website called DistroWatch. And yes, I'm one of those people who refuses to type .com. I'll just go to a search engine and then click. I don't care. I don't care. There's a website you can go to called distrowatch.com. You won't use this now. You'll use this later when you start realizing you have a lot of power with these virtual machines and you get excited and you want to try a bunch of different stuff. DistroWatch is like a huge collection of Linux operating systems. I'm not going to go through all of the operating systems, but if you just look at the sidebar here, page hit ranking, you can kind of get a good idea for what operating systems are popular at any given time. So I guess that means as of the filming of this video, MX Linux is incredibly popular. Never even heard of Endeavor Linux. Mint, a lot of my friends used Mint as their very first Linux distribution. It's very similar to Ubuntu. I think probably a lot of people would say it might be easier to work with at first. Manjaro, Debian, everybody loves Debian. I've got a Debian server. Debian is kind of where a lot of other Linuxes come from. So if you want to kind of work your way towards a system admin position, or just call yourself a serious Linux person, you might eventually want to work your way up to Debian or Rocky Linux or Fedora or something like that. So Fedora is number 7, and Ubuntu, the one that we're going to install, is number 8. So you can click all these links to find more information about the different Linuxes, how popular they are, what their features are. But for now, I'm just going to assume that we kind of went through this and we decided on Ubuntu. So now we're back to ubuntu.com. I'm going to click on download. And we want to get Ubuntu Desktop. So I'm going to click on the Ubuntu Desktop link. And Ubuntu has this release schedule where every once in a while, every once in a great many moons, they'll release something called a long-term service or long-term support. A long-term support release. So this is Ubuntu 22.04.02, or sorry, just 2. Ubuntu names its versions after the date that the versions were released. So you can see immediately that this Ubuntu was released in April of 2022. So here it's a little bit further into the future, and I prefer staying up to date. So I'm going to install instead 23.04, which was released in April of 2023 of this year. The only difference really is that, they'll kind of do patches and debug updates or security updates and things like that. They'll do those things longer on the LTS updates. So, Ubuntu 23.04, the moment they release the next Ubuntu, then 23.04 is just going to be off the website, and they're not going to support it anymore. And they're going to try their best to force you to download the newest one. I'm okay with that because I like to upgrade my Ubuntu all the time. But if you don't want to upgrade very often, if you're in a corporate environment or something, you probably just want to use the LTS versions. Academia is very fond of that. Anyway, so I'm going to go to 23.04, Oh man, I'm getting itchy because I think a new one's going to come out in like 2 months. I can't wait. It's going to be a different animal. They always feature an animal. Let's see, what's the animal for this one? I can't even remember. It's kind of like a jellyfish, jammy jellyfish maybe. Anyway, so I'm going to click on this button, download 23.04. And it says thanks, and if you get a screen on this or any Linux website that says, hey, make a donation, I mean, you probably should, it's a good idea, but in the vast majority of Linux operating systems, you don't actually have to pay or donate or do anything to just get the operating system. You can see right now I'm downloading mine for free. Anyway, what am I actually downloading, by the way? I don't think I can zoom this very, very much right now, but I'm downloading a special type of file called an ISO file. And all you have to know for now is that an ISO file is sort of like an image of a disk or like a CD-ROM or a DVD or something like that. It's like a little file system with a bunch of files inside of it. And it's just kind of formatted in a certain way to where you can, instead of unzipping all the files at the same time, you can just take the ISO file and attach it to another program that can read the ISO file, and that program will see the entire file system. So for VirtualBox, it's going to basically be, we attach this ISO file into VirtualBox, into one of the virtual machines, and then the virtual machine is basically going to think that we've inserted a DVD into itself, into the virtual machine. And then it'll be just like in the old days where you stick a DVD or a CD into a computer, and then you boot up the computer, and then you install the operating system. All right, I'm going to get some water while this is downloading, but yeah, download this, and then we're not going to click on this and launch it. We're going to use it with VirtualBox in a bit. Okay, so I think that my download is finished. I have the ISO file here now. I'm going to close the browser, and I'm going to open up my little file explorer. I'm going to click on the downloads area of the file explorer. So, quick access, desktop downloads, and I can see, let me see if I can increase can I increase the size? Yeah, there we go. I'm doing a control mouse wheel to increase the size just for the sake of the video. You don't have to do this. And you can see there's VirtualBox when I downloaded it, and here's the ISO. Actually, I don't like that. Let's do list. No, how about details? I like details. Can I increase the size with details? Nope, doesn't want me to. All right, okay. I guess that's the best I can do. So notice that the, whoops, should not have double-clicked on it. Don't open your ISO file. Notice that the ISO file doesn't have an extension here. That always bothers me. In Windows, it likes to hide the file extensions from you, so you have a little bit less control, which I think is convenient sometimes, but I hate it. Anyway, so at the top of the Explorer window, I'm going to click on View, and then File Name Extensions. I'm going to check the little box for File Name Extensions, and then you can really see the file extension for every file that you have. And I think sometimes when people try to save a file as a certain extension, but maybe the program they're using is forcing a different extension, sometimes you get these weird files where there's like one extension dot another extension, and it's hard to figure out why it's not working. So this, I don't know, this helps me. So remember where you put this. It's in the downloads area. Let's go back to VirtualBox. Let's create a new virtual machine. So what are we going to do? We're going to click on New, just this new button right here. Let's give our virtual machine a name. So we'll just say, my cool Linux thing, just to prove to you that you can name it whatever you want. The folder here, basically all the files for your virtual machine are going to reside in this one folder here. I should have mentioned before that part of the isolation that you enjoy comes from the fact, the isolation between the guest and the host comes from the fact that the entire disk drive, the entire like hard drive, SSD, disk drive, whatever you want to call it, for the virtual machine, for the guest operating system, is not your host's drive. So they're two totally separate drives. The guest machine's drive is actually just a file that is going to serve as a virtual drive. And so every time your guest operating system is like reading or writing, creating files, installing programs, making changes, doing whatever, Anytime you make a change to your operating system, it's actually just going to be writing the changes to your little virtual file there. So, I mean, if you think about it, if you just like wiped the entire hard drive, you're really just wiping this file on your host machine. So the host machine is really not going to be affected, just that little file is going to get affected. So anyway, so VirtualBox likes to keep logs and configs and virtual disks and things in a nice little place on your computer. I'm going to leave it at the default. Just keep that in mind in case you ever want to copy paste the virtual machine to a friend or make a backup or something like that. So then it's going to ask for the ISO image. So if we click the drop down, there's nothing here. So I'm going to click on Other so that I can select the ISO image that we just downloaded. So I'm going to click on Other. And I just have to remember that it's in the Downloads area, right? So I'm going to click on Downloads. You know, my username, Mike, Downloads. If you're not sure where you're at, maybe go to like this PC and then, you know, click on like the C drive and then Users and then the name of your user. And then at that point, you'll see the Downloads folder, or probably Quick Access is fine, depending on what you see. So I'm going to click on Downloads, and then we see the ISO file that we downloaded, the Ubuntu ISO file. So I'm going to click on Open. And now it's listed right there. And so it's kind of almost going to be the same thing as inserting, you know, a DVD or a thumb drive or something into the computer. This is actually a lot easier than it used to be. You used to have to create the machine and then manually attach it. Okay. By the way, if you're interested in manually attaching and detaching ISOs and other drives, leave a comment and maybe I'll make a video for it. Okay, so then Edition. Let's skip unattended installation just so we can see a little bit more of what's happening. It's not detecting the edition. I don't know why. I guess that doesn't matter. Type Linux version Ubuntu 64. Oh, I guess there is no edition because that's, I thought version was going to be an edition. We could click expert mode if we wanted to. Let's see, what can we change with expert mode? Unattended. Unattended's actually easier, but I would skip it so we can just control every step of the installation. I'm not going to do it. Hard disk. Oh, okay, yeah. Expert mode is definitely good. Okay, so the two things. That's funny. This does it all for you if you don't go expert mode. You used to have to do this all yourself. Okay, so click on Hardware. Notice how there's a little section up here that says Base Memory. So when you create a virtual machine, you have to give it some memory. You have to sort of like slice off a little piece of memory from your host machine and give it to the virtual machine. You don't want to share memory with the guest machine. That's another way that we isolate the guest and the host. If the guest could see the exact same memory that your host had, then your guest machine might be able to, you know, do something evil to you. Or spy on something, or, you know, whatever. So we have to sacrifice some memory to the guest machine. The question now is, how much memory can we sacrifice? Well, if you don't really want to think about it too much, just stay within the green line here. So like you can move this slider to control how much memory goes to the guest. Don't go past the green. Just keep in mind that the more memory you give the guest, the faster it's going to be, at least in terms of whether or not it has enough memory to run all of its applications before swapping out to the disk and getting slower. But the more memory you give it, then the slower your host might become, because your host might not have enough memory to run all of its applications without you know, using a page file or like swapping the disk. So you kind of want to find a balance. If you have, let's see, if you got like 8 gigs, then you kind of want to be careful on your host. My host has a lot of memory. Well, okay, that's going to be a spoiler for later. This machine only has, I think, 12 gigabytes. So I probably would want to give only 3 or 4 gigabytes to the guest machine. I'm in luck though, because really, Ubuntu is just like really light. Linux tends to be pretty light unless you're running something crazy on it. I've ran Ubuntu with 2 gigabytes of RAM and been okay. And I think 3 gigabytes at this time is probably fine. If you want to play YouTube videos and like, you know, a bunch of other stuff, graphical intensive applications, if you want to edit video, then yeah, you probably want to give you're going to want to give your guest more memory. But I could easily get away with just 4 gigabytes. Or even 3. I'm tempted to do 3, but maybe I'll just do 4 since I have 12 on this host machine. So what do I mean by 4 gigabytes? A gigabyte is, you know, roughly 1,000 megabytes. So you can see here that VirtualBox is listing the memory as MB, so megabytes. So if I want to give it 4 gigs, then I basically just give it about 4,000 megabytes. Let's see, 102.124, 4048, 4096. Oh, that's exactly 4 gigabytes. It's pretty nice. Okay, so I'm just going to type in 4 gigabytes. Your mileage may vary. Keep in mind, you can change this later if you realize you've given the guest too much or too little. The next thing is processors. This is sort of the same situation. When you give, first of all, in your computer you have a little brain, so like a little chip, right? It's called the processor or the CPU. Depending on how expensive your CPU is, or your machine is, you may have just one core, so like one virtual processor that you can give, or 2 cores, or 4, or 8, or whatever. When you give a processor core, here we're just going to say give a CPU, give a processor, whatever. When you give one to the guest machine, you're not actually losing it for the host, but it does kind of give, it's going to be shared, which if you understand the way CPUs work, that's not really a danger because only one program will ever run on the CPU at the same time. And so it's kind of like your host will get a little time on the CPU, and then the guest will get a little time, and then the host will get a little time, and they don't really go at the same exact time. So there's not really that much risk of corruption there. Or like there's not a security concern that we have to worry about, but it does give the guest the opportunity to totally slow down your host machine if it decides to do a bunch of stuff that sort of just saturates the CPU cores. So definitely don't go past the green line. But if you go right up to the green line, let's say this machine has 6 cores. That's another wink for the future. This machine has 6 cores. If I give the guest 6 cores, then in the case where the guest totally has a program running that just wants to eat up all the CPU, then my host machine is going to start slowing down too. So just for me personally, you don't have to do this. I usually like to give the guest only what it needs, or at most 1 less core than I have available on the host. So I don't know, in my mind, if the guest starts trying to bring down the host with a bunch of CPU usage, then at least there's 1 core that hasn't really been given to the guest, and it'll be always free for the host. So at least, I can kind of like use my host enough to turn off the guest, rather than the whole system just kind of crashing. So I'm going to do at most 5, but I think for this situation, I'm just going to do maybe 4 processors. So that's it for the base memory and the processor. Let's see, for the hard disk, remember we talked about before we're going to have a virtual hard disk for the guest machine. So it's not going to use all the space on your computer. It's going to use only the amount of space that we allocate to it with this virtual disk file. You might be tempted at first to just say, all right, the default value is fine, but I don't know. Personally, I think that might not be enough. 50 gigabytes could be enough if you're not really going to do that much stuff. But in my case, I've known a lot of people just by trying to learn C++ and assembly and other concepts, other computer science concepts, that they later regretted only having a 50 gigabyte hard drive. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just going to do 75 for now. That probably sounds like a lot. It kind of is. That should be more than I need for anything on this machine. And you can see here, this is the path to your virtual hard disk. It ends in a VDI extension. So literally, if I wanted to like configure an entire operating system, install a bunch of programs, do whatever I was going to do, and then just copy paste the VDI file to my friend or maybe to my backup drive or something like that, then you're essentially backing up the entire machine, minus a few settings like how many CPU cores and how much memory we've given to the guest. But the operating system itself, it always is stored on the drive, right? Like the hard drive. So this is it. You could back this thing up or transport it just by copy pasting pretty much, with a few extra steps, but that's pretty much it. So we leave this button selected to create a virtual hard disk. We select the size here, and we do not check pre-allocate full size. What is this doing? This basically means if we check pre-allocate full size, then instantly a 75 gigabyte file is going to be created on the host machine. But if we uncheck it, then the file is going to be really, really small at first, and it's only going to grow as the guest operating system needs more space. The guest operating system will still see the full 75 gigabyte drive, but it will only use a small amount on the host. And so this is useful with something, I guess, called, I don't know if this is, some people call this over provisioning. It basically means if we wanted to, we could just make a ton of virtual machines and they all have a terabyte drive, even if maybe the host machine only has like 2 terabytes. It will work as long as all of the virtual machines are not actually using all of their space, if they're just using like a little bit each. So it kind of gives you the freedom to give a guest a lot more space later if you really need to, while at the same time saving space on the host. And then the only real penalty for this is it's just like a little bit slower if the hard drive needs to grow. So like if the guest suddenly needs to use another 10 gigs, but the file on the host was like definitely not that big, then the file on the host has to grow. And so that's just like a little bit slower in order to do that. You can also change the type of file. I wouldn't recommend changing this from the default. The default is fine. There's another cool thing I used to do where I would create an operating system inside a VirtualBox or another hypervisor, and once I was done, then I would just convert it to a raw image file. VirtualBox, I don't think, has the option to start as a raw image file, but you can convert this VDI to a raw image file, just like straight ones and zeros, no extra information that the host has, no compression, no sparseness. Then you could write that image file directly to a USB thumb drive or some external hard drive or whatever, and then you can kind of walk around with a portable operating system, even encrypted and everything. So again, leave a comment if you're interested in another video for that. But for now, we're just going to leave it as a VDI. If you wanted to, you could use an existing hard drive here. You could not add a hard drive and then just set it up later. But we're going to select those options. So let's see, we got hardware and unintended install, and name an operating system unattended. Can I just disable this? I don't want an unattended install. I want to do it. I don't know why the name got erased. Maybe that's because I hit advanced mode. So I'm going to say my super cool Linux guest. ISO, oh, it erased the ISO image. Okay, so I'm just going to select the ISO again. Type Linux, Ubuntu, skip unattended installation. Good. That's what I really wanted to do. So now after all that, just kind of understanding what we're giving to the guest, we hit finish. Now notice nothing has really changed. We just have like a little entry here. On the left side in the left pane, it says my super cool Linux guest. That little tab is the entire guest operating system. It's like the entry. So imagine now that you have like a bunch of entries, a bunch of tabs below that. You're allowed to do that in VirtualBox. So now how do we get this thing going? Well, for starters, if you made a mistake and you want to change some settings, click on that first and then click on settings. And you can pull up this panel and change anything you want. Like maybe you want to change the memory you gave it. You want to change the number of processors you gave it. Didn't I set that higher? I don't know what's going on here. You can change the description, like you can keep notes on your virtual machines, snapshots. I can talk about that in another video if anyone's interested. Video memory monitor count. So if you have like a multi-monitor setup on your host machine, you could actually tell VirtualBox to give 2 different display windows to your guest, and then you can sort of drag them to both monitors on your host machine, or 3 or 4 monitors, whatever you want to do. It's kind of cool. Storage, you can see here that the ISO is attached, and then the disk we just made is attached. There's more detail that we don't even need to go into. Network, NAT, that's totally fine for now. Later on, if you want to make your virtual machine into a server that is visible to your entire network, there's more stuff we have to do there. Leave a comment if you're interested. USB, we have the ability to put a USB device into the host and have your guest grab it. So like, I don't know if you have like a webcam or something, or like a tablet, like a little draw pad, you could plug that into your host machine but actually use it in your guest. That's very useful. I'm not going to do anything right now. Shared folders, we can make another video on that if anyone is interested. This is a really convenient way to trade files back and forth between your guest and your host. I think I probably am definitely going to make a video on that. So like if you make something in your guest and you want to have the host be able to grab the files, then this is kind of how you do it, or back and forth. So, I mean, everything's fine. I'm just going to hit cancel because I didn't want to change anything. But, what did I... It says I changed something. What did I do? Snapshots, description, encryption. Okay. Encrypting your operating system is a good idea, but I'm not going to do it right now. I don't remember actually changing anything. Well, I'll just hit OK and hope everything goes according to plan. So now that we're sure we have the settings the way we want them, I'm just going to hit the Start button. Well, I'm going to select the operating system in the tab, or the guest in the tab. Then I'm going to hit the Start button, and we'll see a window pop up now. All right, it's powering up. At this point, if you haven't enabled the virtualization extensions in your CPU, then... Okay, so this is going to be a weird thing that I have to enable. So this is good. So this is the kind of thing you'll see if you have not enabled virtualization extensions on your host machine in the host's BIOS. How am I going to do this? So I guess this is a little bit of a spoiler alert. I am already currently inside of a virtual machine. What you're looking at right now is a virtual machine. So I had just assumed that the virtualization extensions would be passed through. I guess I have to like do a couple minutes of research and cut the video and then come back. But this is the kind of thing you'll see. Hyper-V, CPU, not available. This is the kind of thing you'll see that will indicate you need to go figure out how to enter into your BIOS and enable virtualization extensions. Okay, so I'm gonna cut the video. I'm gonna pause it. When I come back, hopefully I will have figured out this issue. If not, I'll just put a screen recorder on my outer host. I'm not sure how to do nested virtualization with Windows machines. We'll see if I can figure it out. Okay, so I'm gonna pause the video. Okay, that was way easier than I thought it was going to be. I got kind of scared for a second there. There's a feature that I just had to turn on. Let me tell you, by the way, if you want to have a virtual machine inside of another virtual machine, you can do that. And what I'm doing here is I had to enable in the settings. I had to go to System and then Processor, and then I had to double check this right here. Enable nested VT-X/AMDV. It's grayed out in this host operating system, so I guess I can't have a third level. Oh, I can't do the VM inception, but I was able to do that on my host machine. Anyway, sorry to confuse you. I know this is supposed to be the host machine, and I was going to make it a huge surprise later that I'm already inside of VirtualBox right now, but whatever. So now that I've fixed that problem, I didn't need to go into the BIOS. I'm just going to click on Start and launch the virtual machine. We'll see a little message window that pops up. It's super annoying. You can dismiss it with this little X thing, but you want to read the messages first to make sure that nothing is going wrong. So it says try or install Ubuntu. Okay, so I can click on the window and then it's going to say, oh, here's capture. If you click on the window and it says you're about to capture the mouse or the keyboard or something, you'll actually be trapped. And you won't be able to get out of this window anymore. In order to get out of it, you have to click on the right control button. In order to get out. So just whenever it says capture, make note of the key it tells you that you're supposed to press in order to get out. So I think we'll be okay. So this is just Ubuntu booting up. So you can imagine, I'm going to click on this red X over the message boxes because I don't want to see those anymore. You can imagine this is like a real computer and it's booting up because you've just put the DVD inside and you've started the computer or the thumb drive or whatever. It's going to take a little while. Notice again that this is a window. It's not taking over the entire computer. This is a windowed program and an entire operating system is running inside of it. So I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to hit the escape key and see if something happens. No. Yeah, okay. Something kind of fun while we're waiting is when Linux boots up, usually you can hit the escape key and you can see a bunch of like cool messages show up. They don't look really cool right now for some reason, but I don't know. It's kind of fun, like while you're waiting for your operating system to boot. So I think I'm going to pause the video and then I'm just going to resume the video when Ubuntu has finished booting up. So my computer's being very slow right now. Oh wait, is it finished? No, I'm going to pause the video. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, so my Ubuntu has finished booting. Nothing was wrong. My computer is just incredibly slow because of all the virtualization I'm currently doing right now. But yeah, so you'll see something like this. It pops up. This is the current version for 2023 April. So select your language on this first screen. Remember, this is like a virtual operating system installer inside of a program on your real operating system. So select your language, click next. It'll ask you if you want to install or try. Normally, I guess you probably would want to use try if maybe you weren't sure about installing an operating system over your main computer. But this is just a virtual machine. There's no reason to try it. Let's just do it. If this is a try, if we don't like it, we can just delete the virtual machine. So I'm going to click on Install Ubuntu and Next. Select your keyboard layout and then test your keyboard if you want to. I'm just going to click Next. It's going to ask you what type of internet connection you want, wired connection or whatever. In VirtualBox, even though this laptop is on a wireless connection, VirtualBox will still expose the connection to the guest as if it were wired. So you can basically just leave it on the default, and you should get internet right away. What kind of installation do you want? A normal one or a minimal? Minimal just is missing a bunch of programs. So if you're launching a bunch of servers and stuff like that, for starters, why are you watching this video? But if you are launching a bunch of servers, you probably do want to use minimal installations to save disk space and such. But we just want like a normal desktop, so I'm going to do normal installation. We want like all the tricks, we want like Firefox installed, and we want all these things. I'm going to go ahead and check install third-party software for graphics and Wi-Fi hardware, because you'll probably want to do that at some point. You'll want to make sure that your Wi-Fi is working. So I'll click on Next. Then it's going to ask, what do you want to do? Do you want to erase the disk and install Ubuntu? Warning, this will erase your entire disk. Okay, you should be scared about this because normally you wouldn't want to do this. But keep in mind, we're using a hypervisor, and this entire operating system, it sees a drive, but it's actually a virtual drive, which is just like a little small file on the host system. So even if we erase the entire disk, we're actually just erasing the virtual disk, which is just a little file sitting on the host. So it's okay, this is not going to ruin your computer. Manual partitioning, you can do that if you want to encrypt your entire Linux installation or do other advanced things. We're not going to do that now. Leave a comment if you are interested in that for another video. So then it's going to confirm to you, what do you want to overwrite, and you can be sure. Well, if you're on a Windows computer, you can kind of be sure that this is not really going to hit the C drive. It's not really going to ruin the C drive by just noticing that the name of the drive here is SDA rather than C. So SDA is sort of like a software disk, or I forgot what SD stands for, but it's just basically hard drive A. And the little number after it, the 1, that just means partition 1 and partition 2. ext4, that's a file system type. And this little slash at the end, that's just the root path. That just means your entire drive is going to start with just a slash. Anything on your root drive is going to be something after a slash. In Linux, we don't use, D:, or C:, or whatever. It's just a slash and then some path. So select your time zone, I guess. Click whatever you want. And then type your name. To set up an account, I'm just going to leave it as is. Choose a password. I'm going to erase this right after the video, so I'm just going to put a bunch of like random letters. I don't know. How about hello? Oh God, my computer's so slow. There we go. Okay, hopefully you can type faster than I can. Don't use Active Directory. That's more advanced. Require my password to log in. Yeah, you want to do that. You don't want your computer to just log in when you power it on, even if it's a virtual machine. Click Next and choose the theme that you want, light or dark. I'm just going to go with the default, light, and click Next. Now this is the part where you're just going to have to wait, because this is, well, this is the entire operating system being installed. If you want to kind of see under the hood of what it's doing, you can click on this little icon on the bottom. It sort of looks like a terminal emulator. Click on it, and you'll kind of see all the different things that Ubuntu is doing in order to install itself onto your computer. I'm going to cut the video in a second because this is going to take a super long time because my computer is going very, very slow right now. But let this run until it finishes. Eventually it'll tell you, actually I think I'll be able to show that to you. Eventually it'll say something like, you know, the installer is done. Hit enter and remove the disk drive, whatever. But it'll be done at that point, and all you have to do is reboot the virtual machine. So let's see, what else can I say at this point? Just wait. If it fails for some reason, or if it hangs indefinitely and you really, really, really are sure that it's not slowly making progress, then you can try to just shut down the virtual machine and restart the entire process. I've known a few cases where people had that happen, and then just kind of like rebooting it and trying a few times suddenly worked for whatever reason. Just be careful you don't think that it's frozen when it's not, because if you kind of look down here at this bottom, this little command that says rsync, what it's actually doing with this particular command is it's copying a ton of files. So that might take a long time depending on how fast your hard drive is. And other parts of the installer are going to be extracting files or building files or doing stuff, so it might not actually be stuck. So just be careful, you know, set like a stopwatch or something and give yourself like a solid 10-20 minutes before you give up on one line finishing, depending on how strong your computer is. But anyway, I'm going to pause the video, and when I come back, hopefully this will be finished. Okay, so fast forward into the future, I'm back, and my Ubuntu has finished installing. So if you click on continue testing, that's kind of useless at this point. It'll just let you poke around the desktop a little. Otherwise, you hit restart now, and your virtual machine will actually restart, and you'll be able to start messing around with it. It'll be a nice permanent operating system. Well, semi-permanent. I'm gonna let it restart. I'm hitting escape so I can see more of the fun messages. I'm gonna let it restart. Then I'm just gonna show you very quickly how to like launch the browser, and then how to force the machine to shut down, either sending the power off signal or saving its state. And then I think that'll be enough for now, and we can save, you know, Linux basics for another video. So this is what the shutdown process looks like. Okay, after lots and lots of waiting for my computer to start up, Ubuntu is now at the login screen. We call this the greeter in Linux. I'm just going to click on my name here and then enter my password. Oh, what was the password I used? It was a super simple one, right? Because I'm going to delete this after we're done. I'll just point out that if you wanted to insert a USB device into your host and have the guests see it, like we talked about earlier, then what you really want is to mouse down over here on this USB symbol and right click it, and then you can sort of like start adding things to it. I'm not going to go into that too much right now. Again, leave me a comment if you're interested in another video that talks about this specifically. All right, so now we have a virtual Linux running inside of our Windows operating system. It looks pretty good. This desktop is called GNOME, and just keep in mind in Linux, almost everything is a program. So you know, the whole desktop environment that we're seeing, we're not stuck with it like we are with Windows or Mac. We can actually switch the program that runs the desktop environment. There's one called XFCE, there's one called GNOME, there's one called Cinnamon, or there was one called Cinnamon. I think there was one called KDE. There's Mate. There's like a bunch of different, like themes and a bunch of stuff you can do. So when you see this from Ubuntu, just do skip. We don't want to do that. You can say, yeah, sure, I'll send my information to help the company that makes Ubuntu with technical info, or you can say no, whatever you want to do. Click next. It's not responding. Just wait. I know my computer is very slow. Privacy, don't enable location services. Maybe you can do that later. And then hit the done button to be done. All right, so this is your Ubuntu desktop. I think probably I don't want to click on the Firefox button because my computer is so slow right now. But you could, oh, you know what? I'm going to do it. Let's go for it. I'm going to do it. We could open up a browser and see what's going on, just to prove that we can have a browser in the outer operating system and a browser in the inner operating system. And then I'm going to have the virtual machine shut down. And then that'll be the end of this video. So, looks like it just crashed. I'm going to blame that on my computer being super slow. All right, so Firefox crashed. That's probably another video if that's not the fault of my computer being slow. So now, I lied was the problem. It didn't actually crash. My computer is just slow. Anyway, so we got Firefox here. I guess I'm just gonna go to, I don't know, Wikipedia or something, and then go to Wikipedia on the host. So I'm gonna go to Wikipedia. I don't remember how to spell Wikipedia. All right. So here's a website on the real computer, the host, and here is an even slower machine, virtually, that is still trying to get to Wikipedia. I don't know. Can you just trust me on this? It'll eventually get there. The computer's being very slow. Never mind, the computer is there. Nope, never mind, the computer is not there. Okay, I don't know. Maybe I have some network settings that I need to fix, but yeah. All right, so then I'm going to show you how to shut down the virtual machine. How do you do it? Okay, so in Ubuntu, it's pretty easy. You just go over here to this top area. At least in the GNOME desktop, you click on the button. You click on the little power symbol here, and you can log out or do power off or restart or whatever you want. But in terms of VirtualBox, there's something that's a little bit more convenient, I guess depending on what you're trying to do. You can just click the X on the window to sort of like shut down the machine, and then you can choose how to affect the shutdown. There's three options that you have here. Number one is save the machine state. What this will do is it will shut down the virtual machine, at least from your host's perspective, but it won't actually shut it down from the guest's perspective. The guest will think that it's still running, and really what's happening is like the memory is being written to a temporary file, like the memory in your guest virtual machine is being written to a temporary file, and then the power is getting cut. And then next time you start it, the power gets turned on, and then all the memory gets written back where it was before. So from the virtual machine's perspective, just a bunch of time has passed, but it's been running the whole time. Or not running the whole time, it just kind of thinks it jumped forward in time. So it didn't realize that it was being shut off at all. Powering off the machine, this is sort of like pulling the power cable, so you kind of don't want to do this unless you have to, unless the virtual machine is not responding. So this would be the same thing as like, pulling the power in the middle of the operating system running, and you never did like a proper shutdown, and you'll probably lose some data, or some programs, will screw up somehow. So don't do that unless you have to. Then this other thing is sort of like a graceful shutdown. Here you're going to send a special signal to the guest, kind of asking it to shut down. This is the same thing as if you push the power button on a physical machine and then hope that the operating system recognized it and will shut down. I mean, the best way is just inside of the guest you want to do the shutdown, but let's see if it works from the outside. So I'm going to hit the X button, and then I'm going to say send the shutdown signal, and let's see what Ubuntu does. Okay, Ubuntu responded properly. Very nice. So now it's just going to shut down. If I had done save the machine state, you would see like a little window, and it would go do 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 do, saving the memory. And then next time you started the machine, it would continue right where it left off. But for now, I mean, that's pretty much it. We've shut down the machine. Next time you want to start it, just click on that tab and then click the start button, and it'll pop up and you'll be okay. And again, you can create many virtual machines in that tab area. All right, so I guess this is the end of the video. It was a pretty long one, but there's kind of a lot to cover, even though we skipped a bunch of stuff. If there's anything that you thought was very unclear or wrong, please leave a comment, and I will make a new video to add more stuff if there's enough interest, or I will release another video to correct errata. I'm sure there's like something in here that I've said wrong, at least once or twice. Support this channel by subscribing, and check all my links on the homepage, and engage with me on social media and all that stuff. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful. And I hope you're learning and having fun. Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye.